entertainment, current events, and Hollywood. Don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
Hi, I think that's me. My name is Roshan. I am a co-showrunner on DC High Volume. I love making audio fiction and digital storytelling in general, and I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Yay. Well, I'm glad you're here too. And I love going back, to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life, our little habits that we pick up along the way, follow us into our adulthood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was that like, and how did you find your way into doing the amazing things you're doing now?
That's so nice. Let me take a second to think about that. I really loved how you put that. In terms of the little pieces that add up, I think I had a childhood in Singapore, which is, I realize now, maybe notable. I in fact grew up and was raised and spent a good chunk of my life in Singapore.
Nice.
Um, my parents were immigrants to Singapore from Malaysia, which is where they were born. So a lot of our childhood, I think, was getting getting used to kind of our family unit, figuring out what that was. And I don't think it's an immigrant story you hear very often, the specific Malaysia to Singapore move.
Hmm.
Um, and I think what that ended up meaning for my parents was that the thing they kept saying, and which they said more now that we're adults, is they had to create their own culture. They had to figure out, like, um, I think they had to figure out from scratch, they felt, without a roadmap, what we would read and watch and talk about together. And an intentional choice that my parents made was to go all in on popular culture. Um, I think they considered it really important that we were watching shows, playing video games, um, reading like books that might be considered trash. I think they I think this is one of the ways in which, like, before anything else, I was like really, really like tremendously blessed. Yeah, sorry. One of the ways that I was like tremendously blessed is the fact that my parents were that experimental, I guess, that their like big provocation to us as kids was like, no, you take all of this stuff seriously, um, because it's important and means a lot to people. And I think that allowed me to grow up with a sense of reverence for. I never had a moment where I needed to learn to treat comic books seriously or video games seriously because they always felt like sacred texts in a way. Like there's nothing more worthwhile you could be doing with your time than consuming these stories and like hoping to one day make something like them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's an awesome. I love that, that you, I mean, I guess you would say, in your words, right? Would you say that you found your purpose?
That's such a lovely way of putting it. Um, Sorry, these are very good questions. They're taking me back a little bit. Y- yeah, I think so. I think that's a lovely way of putting it. I think I've never struggled for lack of purpose personally. I've always felt very certain and very, I think, quietly certain that this is the thing to be doing. And I think it does take a while to cross the bridge from fan to creator. And I think that's a personal struggle that a lot of us go through. And hey, this is creators to creators. We got to talk about that pipeline. But yeah, that was maybe the biggest thing. And I think that was maybe the biggest drawback of I think a childhood or being raised in Singapore where so many of these things are still kind of dominant, like um, West Side sometimes take a little for granted the fact that um, so much of this culture, like American culture, is dominant in other spaces where sometimes I talk to people here and they kind of go, everyone in the world has their own little kind of cultural kind of thing. There's movies elsewhere, they just watch their movies. When it's
Yeah.
really like, no, I mean, the tragic part, I think, I've always found it tragic, is that often when you participate in global popular culture, even quite far abroad, often what you're doing is participating in American often culture and thinking to yourself simultaneously, like the first Avengers movie, this rules. I could, and then also like that, like how on earth would you ever be able to participate? And I think a lot of aspirational storytelling is received as a one-way bridge of stuff that comes to you, but you don't go to it. And I think while I'm tempted to say something like our love as a family of popular storytelling gave me a sense of purpose, I think it wasn't until much later in life that I felt like that love could be even conceived of as purpose to move with.
I love that. I love that. You've worked, I mean, gosh, you've done so many things. You've worked as producer, writer, director across projects, like, DC High Volume, Batman. Which role feels more natural for you and why?
That's a lovely question. Um, I think I think it's so funny how roles work. I want to interrogate the producer one first, because that's a funny one that crops up, and I know that none of us necessarily know what it means. So I would like to
Right.
contextualize what I think it means to me. Producer to me emerges out of the vacuum of, good Lord, we just need to get this thing made. I think I always identified first as a writer. And then eventually I learned that directing my scripts helped me get them out there. So I learned how to direct essentially to make sure that I could tell the stories I wanted to. I came to producing in a similar way, which was um, I realized that positioning myself as a writer and director, the response you quickly learn, and I'm sure many people listening to this have been through this themselves. You learn that if you come out there and say, I'm a writer and director, um, the response you are primed to receive is, well, good for you. Like
Yeah.
join the club. You want to be a big shot writer director, and you're like, oh my God, maybe writing and directing is actually a privilege, not necessarily something you can just declare. I came to producing by way of wanting to earn the right to write and direct, I guess. It to me now that we've worked also with more producers, and I've not been the only producer in a project, I think I've come to it as a term that describes doing all of the work that makes the creative expression possible. And it's often creative itself, like
Right.
um, I think you run into huge problems when people who don't care about craft um, kind of distribute budget line items. And even the act of saying, I think our music composition budget for this should be tuned a little bit up, and we'll make that work elsewhere. That's a creative decision that is entirely within the realm of financing. But if you don't have somebody who loves um, art, who loves craft, and who is a good collaborator, if you don't have that person there, everything else does kind of fall apart, or people work for not what they're supposed to. And that's not great either, because that's not sustainable art, I think. All that is to say, talking about the art of producing, I don't think that's what I was put on this earth to do. I've never thought, well, like everybody, maybe there are some people, but I think for me, producing um, very often is a giving kind of act. It's something which is born out of love and service. Whereas I do think that with writing and directing, it contains that too. I think the qualities of a good producer and the qualities of a good director certainly are very aligned. I think, and it's hard to say that that's not the big challenge. Like, uh, the thing that I think so many of us treat as an ultimate privilege, the golden goose. I think right at the end of the lane of all the struggle and all the networking events and all that stuff is when you're sat down in a room, do you have the thoroughness, the meticulousness, the strength of creative vision, and the inner kind of collaborative spirit to make that possible, to make your vision come to life in a way that improves the lives of the people working on it. Um, oh man, like that's I mean, so not to choose favorites. I think there's obviously a necessary and worthy component to everything, but I do love the impossible challenge of directing a dream project and actually thinking through execution. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna lock in that answer for now, and I'll regret it tomorrow.
I love that. What a great answer. I mean, I just think that, you know, yeah, I agree with you. There's so many roles. I mean, I think in this industry of the creative process is, I went to school for cinematography, so I totally understand what you're saying. It's like I go to school for this, but I'm actually doing other things. I wear different hats. Like I ended up doing writing. It didn't, it's just so many things. Like it's the process. And I think that's um really good though that you don't put yourself in a box. Well, creatively, like you're okay to expand your horizons. And I think the more you know, the better.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, like when I think when you find your dream projects and you
Mhm.
often come to them at weird stages where they're partially formed or nothing ever emerges the way that I think we hope it does where and now we hired the writer and that's you and now we hire the director and that's you and now you get your but it's always some weird thing of like someone's like maybe doing something or they're part of the job and they're kind of not doing right and you get talked to and they're like well we're thinking about bringing in you and then there's this guy and then there's an existing system like so much of it is just about like oh my God like before I can do my job I need to figure out how to make this thing work and
Yeah.
that's okay that's I think um we talk a lot about how it's an insane time to be in the industry but I also think it is kind of fundamentally part of our mission objective that it is an insane industry
Oh yeah.
kind of
Oh
by
yeah.
default. And I guess the reason I say that is just like having these parts of yourself not feeling so tied to doing one thing means that you get to, I think, slot yourself in to projects that align with your values. And that's definitely what I found. Like when I find something like DCI Volume Batman, for instance, like I actually started work on that initially as an associate producer.
Nice.
Uh, and yeah, I was an associate producer who was trusted with scripts, and then kind of was able to do the old something that I thought didn't exist anymore, which was work my way kind of through that production and
Yeah.
through pre-production to a point where I could be trusted with leadership. But that was a case where like I very explicitly told them when I was approached for it, and when Fred, my current co-showrunner, considered me for that associate producer position, an explicit conversation that he and I had was like, I would just give me whatever, like just tell me what needs to be done on this project, and I'd be very happy to learn how to do it. And I think I've found a lot of success personally, not just professionally, but also like in terms of my heart and fulfillment, in kind of glomping onto projects that seem aligned and just kind of making it work. Or if I need to learn a skill, um, like I think some of my favorite experiences, I say favorite, again, I might wake up tomorrow and regret saying that, have been when my company, Andas Productions, was commissioned for video games.
Nice.
And I thank you. Video games rule. I think games rock. I think games and audio dramas have a lot in common,
For
but that's a
sure.
separate question. What I'll say is like I taught myself how to program so that we could put our first two games out, where I think for the first two games we did, I was the sole credited programmer, and that was a bizarre skill set that you don't expect to learn
Yeah.
like many years post graduation after getting your arts degree. But it ruled. I had so much fun doing that. Like I still occasionally program for fun. And I would never have come to that if I didn't kind of go, well, someone's got to do it. So I think, yeah, we close ourselves off if we don't imagine there
Yeah.
could be something. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting you said about the, you taught yourself that skill. Like, I mean, because I'm sure that's, you know, like, how did, s- well, can you walk us through the process of adapting, existing, IP into an immersive audio narratives? I'm sure
Mm.
that's pretty cool. I never.
Totally. I mean, it is really cool. It's kind of the big thing that I've wound up doing. So in my personal career, which is very much almost in its entirety through my production company, Andas Productions, almost everything we've done has been an adaptation of some form. Our debut project was an audio show called Temujin, which was an adaptation of this incredible kind of ancient ancient Central Asian contemporary to Genghis Khan historical document
Nice.
um, detailing his upbringing and everything that led up to his death, but written at the time that he was just passed. So it's actually this like really fresh recount, supposedly intended for just the royal family, which means that it's also this really intimate look at his life,
Hmm.
from a really surprising perspective. Our very first kind of mission as a production company was to adapt to that into an audio drama. And I think from there we have adapted solar punk like sci-fi short stories. Um, we have adapted, I guess, Cat Skull, which is ongoing, which is a
Yeah.
neo-noir come of age Singaporean thriller, which is incredibly dark. Kind of David Fincher meets Kick-Ass,
Nice.
um, set in Southeast Asia. It rules. I'm a big fan of it. I can say that because I didn't write it. Um, but yeah, I think the thing that tied all of this stuff together, first off, is genuinely, I think none of this works if you don't encounter the source material and go, holy shit. None of this works unless you have a really strong, as adapters, experiences going through whatever this is, and having that feeling, because I think that feeling is the thing that you end up basing everything else around. An example for that for Temujin was there's one scene near the end, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's the final scene of the final episode where I was reading it in, I think, 2016 during my first ever trip to New York, from Singapore. And I was reading it on an L train. I remember this. I just had to like close the book and I just stared out the window for half an hour and went, oh my God, that's crazy. Um, and then I went to look for like adaptations of that moment because I wanted to see it brought to life. And there was nothing in English that captured that scene. Um, and that kind of blew me away. And I think there's something in essential about that, which is having an experience as a fan of something and then going, how do you how do you give more people that feeling? Obviously, recommending the thing is great. And
Right.
anybody who knows me in my personal life has deep problems trying to shut me up when it comes to like recommending any kind of media. But that can only go so far. I think what adaptation is an act of love, and it's an act of trying to take the most powerful moments or essence of how you receive something and giving that, I think to me, often the core is faithfully to someone else. So with Temujin, it was about like that twist moment really, really ruled. And can we give everything in the story such that we can do that twist moment and it'll like take people's breath away? For something like Batman, obviously, with those stories, we're dealing with the sacred texts, like the
Right.
uh, Year One, The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, even Ego, right? Like, and recently The Killing Joke. Like, these are all stories with so much weight to them. But the good thing for us is usually when we're going through them again, it's very evident to us what is striking and what is profound and what qualities and emotion we want to preserve. Like it's not just about preserving the words, that we often like to do that too. Our stance is this stuff this stuff kind of became famous for a reason. It landed for a reason. It resonated with people for a reason. Our job isn't to reinvent the wheel. I think very often where adaptation tends to go wrong, from my perspective, is when people come to the source material and go, "Oh, I think I." A couple of things that have irritated me in a montage. One, well, if people wanted to encounter the story, they would just go read the comic. We got to do something different because we're adapting. I heard that in a writer's room, and it made me very sad. The second thing is people who go like, well, yeah, the act of adaptation um, is not just about bringing it to a new medium. It's about surpassing the original. We have to think, what are the ways that we can improve the story to merit the fact that we are adapting it and spending all this money on it? And I think both are silly. I think both are silly. I think that is fundamentally the wrong approach to me to bring to any adaptation, where I think almost always the goal should be harnessing what made the thing great. And
Right,
if you
right.
don't think it's great, I feel like to me then that's a whole different can of worms. I think then to me, I'm working off of a story inspired by that story, right? But like to me, what an adaptation is distilling what makes that story excellent, um, and trying to kind of work within that space. So yeah, DCI Volume Batman, there's a lot of that in there. It's word for word. It is almost panel for panel. Like the thing that we keep thinking among ourselves is like one of the best ways to listen to it is to have the comic open and just kind of have fun reading and listening, and then you get the full like VR-esque experience of being completely transported. It's this really weird but very specific thing, which is neither the same as listening to it or reading the
Mm.
comic. It becomes this whole third thing, which yeah, this is a rambly answer, so I don't know that I answered your question directly.
Love
Um,
it. No, I love how you talk about your, the process. It's very interesting, I must say. It's like, because yes, audio is completely different, and to you know give the audience a way with we feel immersed into this world. How do you collaborate with voice actors to help them build emotional, grounded performances in an audio only medium?
you ask such good questions. The
Thanks.
smile on my face is it's genuine. Yeah, this is you're talking about my favorite things.
Yay.
Yeah, I think working with voice actors, when I mentioned earlier that I love directing, when the moment you ask that question, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. Like voice actors rule. Voice actors are the coolest people in the world. I think maybe they're even cooler than voice directors. Um, I think, yeah, voice acting and vocal performance is in general a craft that is ridiculously undervalued for how specific it is. I think for how magical it is when you listen to a good voice actor doing their thing, if you have the privilege of being in the same room as them,
Mhm.
there's a kind of they can get you chills pretty quick, um, from nothing.
Yeah.
Their ability to conjure characters, work with them, create mood, atmosphere, and sell you on not just their performance, but the reality of a situation just through their voice is yeah, I mean, and enough has been said of the kind of post-Aladdin Hollywood fixation on celebrity stunt casting
Mhm.
instead of voice actors. But the truth is, voice actors are still there. They're still around. They are voicing your favorite, like, anime, video games, cartoons. Generally from DC High Volume Batman, that's actually where we're pulling from
Nice.
a lot of the time is working voice actors who do this stuff for a living
Mhm.
and whose voice, if you look them up, you'd be like, oh, I've heard that person 100 times.
Right.
But you don't need, and I think one of our beliefs is that you don't need to sell the show like exclusively off of like the brand name of the voices attached. I mean, what ends up happening instead is you hire voice actors like Jason Spizak as our Batman, who are so immensely talented that the selling point of the show becomes their performance of that character and
Mm,
not the name attached to it. And
right.
I'm not saying that big names can't do memorable performances. We've seen a lot of that. I think Batman: The Audio Adventures had a lot of big names and a lot of great performances. So I think not to rag on that. I think that's also a valid way to approach things. Um, but I think one thing that's really helped us is in keeping the show this focused on generally working with talent who are working voice talent. Um, the show was able to sustain for 43 episodes across a
Amazing.
weekly release. It allowed us to work in such a way where um, yeah, every single person on our team was able to receive fair compensation that was sensible. We were really lucky to work with people like Troy Baker, but even Troy Baker, in like full disclosure, he came in and was like, "This is a passion thing for me. I want to get this character right. I want to like help out in this way, and I'm not doing this for the money. I just really care about the story." I think this general philosophy, just in terms of, we haven't even talked about working with them yet, but in terms of approaching voice actors, has done so much, I think, for us um, in creating the spirit of like collaborative play. Um, nothing feels to me on this project, or in most of our indie projects, you can imagine, but still, um, like it's been a thing of walking on eggshells. It has genuinely felt, and I can say this about every single actor we've worked with, genuinely every single of a cast that I believe is about in the hundreds range,
Hmm.
every single one has felt like play, and every single one has felt like eager, joyous, like get in the room, get in the booth, and let's figure this thing out.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
and just to speak briefly to direction, I think the coolest thing about audio for me is that when you're tuning a performance for it, this is my personal directing philosophy. When you have earphones in your ear and you're receiving an audio fiction show, we are extremely sensitive to pitch. And
Hmm.
when I say pitch, I mean energy. An enthusiastic "Hello, how are you doing?" In your ear kind of goes, "Eh." You know, it magnifies energy like tenfold. So coming at audio performance with theater energy can really risk overwhelming a listener, as opposed to I think what I found is like there's a sweet spot where you pitch it a little under, you bring it something closer to film, but then you kind of make sure that we're layering in expressiveness and clarity, making sure that we are retaining yeah, I would say expressiveness, clarity, and maybe the reality of the scene are the things we keep pushing to. As a director, we're making sure that obviously no words are being tripped up because words are our scene. Unclear words are very often like out of focus camera, audio wise, and you can't
Yeah.
have that. So you gotta make sure that's established. And then the second thing is expressiveness and reality of the scene, I think, go together. As a director, the thing that you end up doing most often is saying, well, let's, you know, like very often a great performance. And then what we do is we receive that and we go, well, you're in an alleyway, you're scared for your life, you just saw someone shoot Batman. Um, you know, and kind of just making sure that we're building that moment. Are you crouched? Are you behind a bin? And you know, if you're crouched behind a bin, there's a certain way that you perform that. And I
Right.
think just workshopping the reality of that moment such that when later on you're hearing it in that scene, the listener is then able to trust, like, oh, I kind of get where this person is. Sounds like they're kind of hunched over it. You don't know how much you can sense. You don't know how
Right.
powerful your ears are. And when we help our voice actors lean into the specifics, both of their feelings and of the moment, I think that goes such a long way. And like, as somebody who hears the dialogue edits with no sound design, and then they become sound design, and then they become sound design with music, very often you can tell when something is working, even at the dialogue edit stage. You don't need to wait till sound designs are added before you know it's a problem. Like, you know, even listening to the vocal performances.
Mhm.
Um, if we can buy the scene, and very often, given the caliber of this talent that we work with on Batman, and on Catskill, which is our other ongoing show, which is really excellent, but like uh, you can fill in the blanks in a way that's really cool.
I love that. I love that. That's it. That's I think that, oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day. Honestly, this is like this show's almost over. I'm like, no. Um, really quickly, what projects are you most excited about next? Like, what, like, I don't know, for yourself?
That's a lovely question. I think we continue to be excited about Cat's
Yeah.
we're entering our third act for it now, I believe. It's a 25 episode long show. As of recording this, we are about to release episode 16. And given that it is a thriller that is heavily based on Greek tragedy, you can kind of assume that the third act for it is going to be explosive
Yeah.
and kind of insane and twisty and turny. And it's sort of building to this unbelievable finish. So we're starting to see all the foreshadowing pay off. Our musical motifs are kind of entering that fun stage where they're like twisted callbacks to stuff from earlier. All that fun stuff that I tend to love. We're really like all cylinders on for Cat's Call at the moment. So definitely excited for that. Um, I don't think I can speak to what's next for DCI Volume, except that I can say I'm very excited for that too. Kind of get a sense, like you know what our adaptation approach is. You can kind of have a sense of what's coming up in the horizon. Very excited for that. Apart from that, there's some unannounced stuff that I
Awesome.
can't talk about yet, but which
Can't
I would
wait.
say is at least as exciting as those two. And yeah, we are. I think one thing that's fun, which I'll throw in as a side, is we've been working on our games again,
Awesome.
which has been a delight uh, to kind of just have something to do that isn't just audio, that consumes most of my waking hours and dreams. I think it's been nice making little rectangles go left and right again for a little bit.
I love that. That's
Till
awesome.
11 p.m.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I love that. Well, that's exciting, and congratulations to everything that you have coming up. Very excited. Please come back on in the future. Um, um, where can people find you on social media really quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at ocean with an R. That's ocean.with.and.r, which is usually how I tell people to pronounce my name. Uh, so that apart from that, yeah, I think that's the last one I'm on. Yeah.
Awesome.
And you can also find our production company, Andas Productions there. Yeah, I guess that's how to reach us.
Awesome. 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 Well, I really like, if you have a quote that you like, that one of your favorite quotes that kind of stays with you when maybe some days is harder than others. What is that quote? Do you have something that you kind of revert back to in those times?
That's a lovely question. I'm going to take a quick 10 to 20 seconds to think about because I think the answer is yes. Um,
Or maybe
what do you do
when you have those times?
That's a lovely question.
That's a lovely
Maybe that'll
question.
help us find it.
Maybe that'll help us find it.
I would say that generally, I'm a radical optimist. I think the only way to get out of bed in the morning
Is
is to do the work of finding the silver lining, or finding that brings you joy and gives you hope,
and
and then chasing it relentlessly. I think that's the only way I know how to be. I think if I yeah, if I ever kind of sat upright in bed and did a pros cons list of every day, I would go insane. Instead, I think what gives me energy is finding the brightest star in the distance, and then just like sprinting towards it.
beautiful. Beautiful.
I think that's to me the best way to live.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time.
Heck yeah. Thank you.